Right now, delighted to be joined by the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps. Good morning to you.
Morning, Julia.
Good morning. Thank you very much indeed. Well, of course, we know that an awful lot of people are very focused on quarantine rules at the moment. I mean, the vast majority of people not flying at the moment, but those who have managed to get away, obviously every single Thursday now looking at the latest announcement on quarantine. Many people expecting that the England would follow suit from Scotland and Wales and impose a quarantine on people arriving from Portugal, possibly Greece as well. Why has England gone a different route from Scotland and Wales and not imposed a quarantine on Portugal? And given the different decision, who's right and who's wrong on that?
Yeah, England and Northern Ireland, in fact, haven't changed things at the moment. There's a whole set of figures that are put in front of you by the Joint Biosecurity Centre, which include, of course, the headline that a lot of people are aware of, and we pointed out before, which is the number of cases per 100,000 of the population over 7 days. But there are other very important things as well, including how many tests have turned out to be positive. Because if you only look at the number of cases, what you're in danger of doing is penalising or punishing countries who do the right thing and just carry out a lot of tests in order to find them. So you've got to look at the percentage as well. And what we found with Portugal, for example, is the percentage has actually fallen this week. And with Greece this week, that actually the overall number had slightly fallen, though I am aware there are concerns from the Greek islands. So we looked at the data, and our conclusion was a standstill decision, different, as you say, in Scotland and Wales.
So you're saying England and Northern Ireland have read the data right and have made the right decision, and Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland and Wales have made the wrong decision then? I mean, if your decision's right, by definition, theirs is wrong.
It's not quite that straightforward, as
Isn't
you
it?
might say. And the reason is this. They actually have a different set of legislation, their own rules, if you like, under which they deploy and apply these quarantines. So, for example, they will have a slightly different set of things that they need to look at to satisfy their domestic legislation. And some of that's making a difference. For example, in Scotland on Wednesday this week, my Scottish equivalent called and said, we're actually doing this early, we're introducing it today, and we're removing Greece. Well, I mentioned a moment ago, Greece actually now has a lower rate per 100,000 than the United Kingdom. I couldn't do that in the UK because our rules are that it's based on the science. I can't just ignore what the Joint Biosecurity Centre tell us.
Okay. In terms of people who very tragically they booked the holiday to Portugal after it came off the quarantine list, got into the safe travel corridors list, and then were told it could possibly lots of speculation that it could be put back on the quarantine list from early Saturday morning. So spent a fortune, hundreds and hundreds of pounds, getting early flights home so they could get back to work on Monday morning or get their kids back to school. They, of course, flown back, missed part of their holiday, spent hundreds of pounds completely needlessly. Would you at least like to apologise to those people who are trying to do the right thing?
Yeah, look, I'm gutted for them. Obviously, the key is you do need to wait to hear what the outcome each decision cycle is. I'm gutted for them, and I have every sympathy because I've been there. Flew to, as you recall, I flew to Spain myself, put it into quarantine the day that I got there. And returned myself to quarantine, leaving my family there so I could get my quarantine done. So I've got every sympathy with people. We did say, actually very specifically, when Portugal came onto the list, please don't go if you're not able to quarantine, because these things can and do change at very short notice, and it is just a fact of living with coronavirus that we all have to be aware of that.
Well, let's talk about how we do live with it, because ongoing demands again for us to get more testing, particularly at airports, get our aviation industry up. But it's not just about people getting away on holiday. This is about how many planes can fly in and out of the country, ability to import and export goods, simply because we haven't got that amount of air traffic. Heathrow Airport have been campaigning on this, sort of all the other airlines as well. When do you think it is likely we could actually get testing, at least at the airports? Okay, you test when people get on the plane, when they get off, and 5 days later, however many times. When do you think that's going to be rolled out so we can get back to being an international trading nation once again?
That's what we want to do, of course. I speak to, for example, John Holland Kay, who's the boss of Heathrow Airport, very regularly. And I heard that clip that was played in your news from Lord Adonis, a former transport secretary, saying it's simple, just test at the airport, the sort of message that airports are saying, and then people can get on with their lives. And I know it sounds completely logical. Why aren't we doing that? The answer is it's not supported by the science. If you test people on day 0 when they return at the airport, bearing in mind this virus has a 14-day incubation period, the sciences, the medical sciences, you probably only pick up 7% of people who might actually be carrying the virus, given that you shouldn't be traveling at all if you're symptomatic. So you're only traveling because you don't think you've got it. A test at the beginning won't give you the answer that we need. So it's not that we're being bloody-minded or we're somehow ignoring these calls. It's because that isn't the solution. What is the solution? Well, probably you'd need to have still some period of quarantine and a test. And we are working with the sector on all of these.
But exactly, a 5-day quarantine that is much more manageable than a 14-day quarantine, isn't it? That's the crucial thing.
That's right. And 5 days takes you up to, off the top of my head, I think it's 85% accuracy. And 8-day takes you up to 95% accuracy, something like that. And then, of course, you've got to also think about your testing capacity. We've worked very, very hard as a country to get these numbers down. And you've seen some stories about pressure on our enormous testing ability now, 330,000 a day. There's still pressure on that. And I can't prioritise returning holidaymakers over care workers of the NHS. So you can see how this is all complex to put together. And it's not that we're ignoring it. And I'm working very hard on this. And I'll work with the sector to try to find these solutions.
Well, the evidence seems to suggest there's plenty of capacity. It's just that people are being sent to the wrong testing centres, and actually many testing centres are lying quite idle. Let's talk about something else in your remit, HS2. Today is the point of no return with the formal start of construction of HS2, this high-speed rail line from London to Birmingham, Manchester and Leeds eventually. There were a lot of people who were hoping that when Boris Johnson got elected that HS2 would go out the window as a big white elephant project that was a waste of money, already far over the original budget. But also, once we hit the pandemic, look, we've got other priorities right now. More people working from home, we're told. Why on earth do we need to splurge over £100 billion of our hard-earned taxpayers' money on getting people between Birmingham and London to and from each place 20 minutes quicker when everyone's going to be working from home from now on?
Yeah, well, you're right that today is the day where we finally put shovels in the ground and launch the actual build of this project. A very, very long time in coming. And by the way, 22,000 new roles that will be recruited, lots of apprenticeships and training and skills that will come as a result of it. But as regards all the rest of it, look, we had these arguments and debates. I know I've talked to you about it many, many times. When I became Secretary of State for Transport, the first thing I did was set up the Oakervee review, and the Prime Minister and I asked Doug Oakervee to look at a sort of starting again from scratch. Should we be going ahead with HS2 or not? And I entered that pretty neutrally, but actually I have to say it's the right decision to get this thing done after all the years of planning. Apart from anything else, we haven't built new railway lines for 150 years north to south. They've served us very well. They're carrying on serving us, and it just stands to reason that eventually, if you want to connect your country, level up and all the rest of it, you need to put in some more capacity. And that is the longer term, looking beyond the coronavirus thing, which I know is difficult to do, but that is a longer term thing. I think it shows a lot of faith in our country's future.
OK, well, let's talk about faith in our country's future and our ability to get good trade deals after the end of the transition period with the EU on December the 31st. It's been mooted that Tony Abbott, the former Prime Minister of Australia, is going to be a UK trade envoy, although it does look like the Prime Minister may have gone a bit cold on that after allegations of misogyny and homophobia have been made against him. Just about half an hour ago, we were talking to Peter Credlin. She was his former Chief of Staff. She says absolutely not, 100%. He is not either of those things. His own sister, Tony Abbott's own sister, who is herself gay, and he campaigned against gay marriage, but then attended her wedding to her lesbian partner. She says, is no question at all, he is not a misogynist and he's not a homophobe. Do you think he is?
I don't know Tony Abbott, I'm afraid, at all. I have seen this story. I think the main thing to say is actually he has not been appointed to anything at all at this stage. And I think we should probably wait. I'm not going to try and better judge his own sister and his own former Chief of Staff and people who know him. But I think we ought to wait before there's actually in a sense, an issue to answer before I wade into Australian politics. I mean, obviously, my views are straightforward. That misogyny and any form of discrimination is entirely wrong. That's what I believe. But I don't know Tony Abbott, I'm afraid, at all.
No, but do you not think that if his own, for instance, former chief of staff and his own sister, who is gay, say that he's not, for instance, homophobic, I mean, that is worth listening to. We've had all these allegations, these slurs against him. It seems to me he has very conservative views. I probably don't share many of his conservative views, but do you think a lot of the attacks on him actually come down to the idea that actually, well, they don't like the fact this is a man who is a conservative, he's Catholic, he's not a sort of towing the line on climate change is the biggest catastrophe of our times. He supports Brexit. Doesn't he just offend on every possible opinion when it comes to the Liberal left, and that's why they're having a go at him?
Well, look, I just don't know the answer to that. Forgive me, I actually don't follow Australian politics quite as closely as I.
It's been front page news for the last couple of days in this country.
Yeah, I know, but it's all sort of predicated on something which hasn't actually happened. It's been front page news because we hear that he might be appointed to something, although I've seen absolutely no indication or announcement that he is being appointed.
He's been put forward by one of your colleagues, the International Trade Secretary, Liz Truss.
Oh,
we know that has happened.
I don't know that's true or false. Certainly, these things usually go to what's called cabinet right round, and I can confirm I haven't had one on the subject. So I think we might be getting a bit ahead of ourselves. And Australian politics, which is pretty sort of how best described. If you watch the House of Commons there, it makes ours look polite. That's how I describe it.
Just finally on this issue, do you think that someone who is opposed to gay marriage, which is something an awful lot of Tory MPs propose, do you think that someone who's opposed to gay marriage for his religious reasons, because he is a Catholic, do you think that means they cannot be employed as a trade envoy?
Well, I know you're pushing me on this. I just hesitate to stray into Australian politics,
okay.
B, something which hasn't been announced, and C, into, and I remember the arguments about gay marriage and all the rest of it when the Conservative government under David Cameron brought it forward. I voted happily in favour, and I have no intention to reopen that settled argument as far as the United Kingdom is concerned.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I did attempt, folks, at Transport Secretary Grant Shapps. Appreciate that. I hope we got to some sense of that.